Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland, still suffering from laryngitis. Anyway, this video is about Greta Thunberg. Forgive me if I've mispronounced her name. My Swedish isn't so good. I was in Sverige once. Jag snackar lite norsk. Du gamla, du fria. Små grytorna. Alla svenska kvinnor har stora bröst. How about that? All right. So Greta Thunberg, she's best known for being a climate change activist who is really the face of the Extinction Rebellion, who recently appeared in the United States at the UN General Assembly before the United States Congress to sound the alarm bell on the crisis emergency, as her movement is calling it. They say there's a crisis, it's nothing short of that, and trying to force the world to sit up and take notice. So she's very passionate about her cause. I think even her most implacable foe wouldn't dispute her sincerity. I don't think she's an actor. She comes across as entirely genuine to me. So she gave a notably emotive oration to the United Nations, impressed many of these sardonic diplomats who applauded her. So she did not simply opine, she buttressed her arguments with facts, so she is gifted in the art of suasion. Bear in mind that she is a Swede, and she delivered this fairly lengthy speech in absolutely flawless English with only a vestige of a Scandinavian accent, and nothing wrong with having that accent. So she's patently clued up, and she cares about our planet. That ought to be welcomed. So she's pointing out that she will be impacted by climate change. Her age, she's 16. Some of the elderly diplomats, they'll be dead in 10 or 20 years. They won't be around long enough for this to really harm them. So she garnered some attention, and rightly so, column inches and airtime. And she said that she should be in school, or skole, as she would pronounce it. And she was already a prime mover behind school strikes in the United Kingdom, not in the United Kingdom, in Sweden. Not that pupils not going to school really causes the country to grind to a halt, but they're playing truant, and again, people are discussing the issue. I don't approve of all the tactics they used, such as they're blocking the traffic in the United Kingdom, blocking buses. When public transport is going to get us out of this, don't block that. And I have a lot of sympathy for the cause, but I don't want to be prevented from getting home. People need to go and pick up their children and do whatever, and they can't get there. So it can be infuriating. And I know they're going to say it's the only way the message can be rammed home. So she was articulate, and she made a fairly positive impression on me. Was it overly emotional? I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. Saying, how dare you? Why is she so indignant? She's outraged because the people who have their hands on the levers of power could do something, are doing very little. And there was the climate change, Paris Accords. Hello, Wisconsin. Reality is an illusion. I'm here for you insomniacs. 4 a.m. in Wisconsin. But, rather little has been done. There have been baby steps towards progress, and she's saying that tinkering is not good enough. We need to take instant and radical action. Only drastic measures will suffice, no half measures. So she notably sailed across the Atlantic to the United States. She didn't want to fly because that would emit so much carbon. People like the Prince of Wales, when he flew to America to pick this up, it was PM, not AM, sorry. When he flew to America, he was emitting so much carbon. I don't know if he offset it. People saying that offset doesn't really work that well. So she wasn't tripped up by the many people who loathe her. Certain vested interests find her quite threatening. It's obviously rather pathetic that these multi-billion-dollar corporations should feel menaced by someone of that age. She was a minor. There have been lots of attempts to smear her. They can't fault her on the science. Saying she's abnormal, and she's openly acknowledged that she is someone who has Asperger's syndrome. Doesn't reflect any discredit on her that she does. No, it's not an insanity, but genius comes with madness. So she's unusual. Nothing wrong with being out of the norm. That's fine. We overemphasize normal. You didn't necessarily want to just follow the herd. And It's not really a choice for her to be a little different, but it's fine that she's different. There's diversity. So her arguments are no less convincing for the fact that she's not neurotypical. People are calling her weird or saying that she's mentally ill and so on. The Russian press is saying this because they're very scared that she might be emulated by other youngsters. So I notice those who despise her, there's been no engagement with the gravamen of her case because her argument is just indisputable. Okay, climate change is happening. Very few people doubt that. Climate change is bad news. More extreme weather events, advance of the desert, rising sea levels, and all the rest of it. Climate change is at least partly anthropogenic, and climate change needs to be stopped. Very few people would take issue with any of that. You might argue about the extent of it. To what degree is it occasioned by human activity? How severe is it? How bad will the consequences be? How fast is it happening? All right, there is some wiggle room on these issues, but on the fundamentals, I think very few people doubt that. So she says you're more concerned with economic growth, and of course that matters. And now I know it's been thrown back at her. Well, that's easy to say if you're a Swede, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, which got a relatively high rate of per capita carbon emissions. That's true. Obviously, the United States has got by a long way the highest, the worst polluter. So if you're a terribly poor person in Bangladesh or something, or Paraguay or Rwanda, you might say, well, forget about that. You know, the climate and the environment, we just need to lift ourselves out of poverty. Some of us are dying here. And I have some sympathy for that argument, but obviously it behoves the most advanced countries, the wealthiest countries, to make the sacrifices to cut back on standards of living, because that's the only way we can improve the situation. We can afford to live less well, smaller houses, not all of us having cars, smaller cars, and things like that, not flying so often. So do I do my bit? Well, okay, I do. I live in one room. I've never owned a car. I've almost never driven. I don't overheat things. I do fly quite a bit. So I'm bad like that, and I could be better. All right. But I think this is the absolutist fallacy, pointing the finger and pointing out because almost nobody's absolutely perfect. We should make no attempt to improve whatsoever. That's illogical. It's a very thin argument. So we need to reduce carbon emissions, and very few politicians have the courage to tell us that. People don't want to hear this. They want to ignore the problem, delay the problem. If they can't quite do those, at least underestimate the scale and severity of the problem. So public transport's the way forward. We need to have more public transport, make it cheaper, make it more extensive, wrap around hours. So get people out of their cars. If you have cars, fewer cars, lighter cars, using less fuel, filling it up, making sure every seat is taken. So 5 people going in a car or 1 person going in a car makes almost no difference to the amount of carbon emitted, but it's much more efficient overall for that amount of carbon to be for 5 passengers, not 1. Thank you so much. Well, please get me some subscribers. Reality is an illusion. That's the name of one of my faithful viewers. I'm sure you love the little puppet you've been going so far left since 2016. All right. She's a puppet of who? What makes you say that? Another attempt to discredit her. But I notice, again, it's not taking up issues like, is climate change happening? Is it caused by mankind, at least partly? Is it bad news? Could we do something to at least slow it down? Okay? Always do that. Always change the subject. Misdirection. And look at obviously the extremely powerful corporations with political parties in their pocket because of the huge donations, and the media are obviously not even taking this seriously enough. They do report it, and you have people there disseminating misinformation, pumping out lies, saying that it's not happening, or coming up with these Looney Tunes conspiracy theories. Oh, it's global socialism, or anything that they can say to try and take away from the seriousness of climate change. But even if it is global socialism, it's still a problem. Yeah? And that's the trouble. I mean, I'm a semi-libertarian, but libertarianism is not going to solve this. So look at this. I mean, we face common problems. That's why we have governments. And, you know, climate change can't be dealt with on an individual scale. Even if I didn't emit any carbon whatsoever, and many people are, that's still going to impact on me. Okay? So she is going to be trolled by people. That people absolutely detest her. So she's bought herself some problems. She's not stupid, Greta Thunberg. So she's put her head above the parapet. She's going to take a lot of stick. I know that she has her fans too. So we need to use more trains, more buses, and so on, and they need to go electric where possible to get people out of their cars, to be anti-car, to tax cars more and things like that, and to tax the most polluting fuels like coal, most of all. Ironically, nuclear energy might be part of the problem. Doesn't emit very much carbon, it's based in uranium. But the trouble is then you've got the radioactive nuclear waste. Where are you going to do that? Put it in the desert, put it in the bottom of the ocean? That doesn't entirely solve the problem. Or some poor people would, poor countries paid to take it. Maybe that's unethical. So smaller houses need to require less electricity, less lighting, less heating, or indeed less air conditioning, like the Boris bus, or double-decker buses, double-decker trains, and fly less, make trains more practical for very long distance. So yes, I agree, Anne-Marie Jackson, climate change is not left or right. It's going to affect you whether you're left, right, or centre. It's are you anti-science? Do you admit science is true? Okay, a rational person will acknowledge this. This is Al Gore said, an inconvenient truth. I wish it weren't true. It would suit me much better if we could burn hydrocarbons as much as we wanted and there was no repercussions. But I'm afraid the ramifications of heating up the planet are very serious, as you can see. But there's this sort of Semmelweis effect of some people simply rejecting information because it's new. Confirmation bias. Some people prefer not to believe it. Going to Fox News or Stephen Crowder or people like that who'll tell them that it's not happening, it's not caused by human activity, blah, 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 and doing anything they can to besmirch the reputation of those who are telling us what is been blatantly true, what's been known to be blatantly true for 30 years now, that global warming is happening and it's very bad for us. So, and sometimes there'll be severe winters, it'll be more extreme weather events, but the overall tendency is to warm up. I know we've had ice ages before, we've had warm periods before, but it's never changed so rapidly. So we need to obviously just wrap up more, use less heating where we can, or dress practically for the climate. Like, if it's a hot climate, wearing shorts and a t-shirt, even in a business situation. Okay, get real. We don't have to wear a suit and therefore it's so hot we have to have very strong AC. So just be more efficient with the use of energy. You're the centre of the political spectrum, both far right and far left are nuts. You might be a nut in some ways and still recognise climate change is true. Somebody's views could be crazy on one issue, but actually sensible on another. The Boris bus never worked. The manufactured right bus went out of business. Boris bus was a bendy bus like that. Was it bending as it went around corners, rather than the double decker, the old route master? So make people turn the lights off in shops when they leave. You just can't have the display cabinet lit up. Christmas lights are very wasteful. Maybe not get rid of them altogether, reduce them. Planes, say we're going to charge you for every empty seat. Be more efficient with plane usage. Make trains a practical alternative to trains. These maglev trains, magnetic levitation trains, go almost as fast as a plane, city centre to city centre, but they use a fraction of the carbon per passenger. And they're quieter, they're better in just almost every way. The only thing is the track is very expensive to build. So government's got to have the political will to do this. There will be some pushback, there will be some unpopularity, and there will be some cost. But you think of the cost of saving the environment and the benefits that will have. And we can use business partly, but I'm afraid it kind of goes against the profit motive a lot of the time. If you could make a profit by polluting a lot, would you do it? Yeah, almost every business would do it. We can't expect that much corporate responsibility. Daimler-Benz made the bendy bus, do you see? So unfortunately, we have to cooperate on this, and people are not sufficiently communally minded. There's not enough public spirit to do this, which is why the government sometimes has got to price people out of doing the wrong thing. Not suggesting we ban planes, we're going to have to just make them more expensive. Doesn't that mean the rich can afford to fly, and the working class won't be able to fly when they used to? Yeah, it does, I'm afraid, and that's it. They're talking about rationing plane tickets and plane miles. That's another possibility. But the simplest way is just through taxation, which is a pity. Right? I don't like high taxes, but the only way this is gonna be dealt with. and I fly a lot. How would I fly less? I suppose I'd be taxed more. I'm not moral enough to make sufficient sacrifice. My contribution to dealing with global warming will just be infinitesimally small. And if everybody takes that attitude, then it'll never be dealt with. So it behoves the most affluent countries to take the lead, to cut back. Economic growth. What is economic growth? Yes, quite right, Catherine Mark. It's a human issue. It's going to infect our entire species and other species. So it doesn't matter whether you're a left winger or right winger. Can you count? Do you recognise when the temperature is going up or not? And the absolute kooks are telling us it's not. People like Alex Jones. People going to have fewer children. If you have no children, you're highly responsible. So we have to waste less energy. So things like that. Try and make sure people don't travel by plane when they could travel by ground transport. Things like that. So that is Greta Thunberg. I think she's a fantastic person, and she ought to be commended for she's done. Okay, she's got publicity. I don't get the impression she's a publicity hoe. Maybe I'm wrong. So there we are. That's my take on Greta. Bravo, Greta. So please subscribe to me. Please donate. Masses aren't prepared to make sacrifices. You're quite lot. Are you quite right? Are you willing to live less well? Very few people are willing to do that for the whole planet, especially when the benefit won't be seen for as long time. And the argument is always, oh, but look at him. It doesn't wash. I need donations to sustain the channel, so kindly donate. Find me on PayPal, georgecallahan79 @gmail.com.